Remember, there's some pretty important information here in the disclaimer. You might want to give the video a quick pause and read it.
Oh, hey everybody, it's me, Sonic the Hedgehog. Just here to remind you that if you haven't already, make sure to hit that like button. And for even more amazing customs, don't forget to subscribe to Wakeangel2001, because between you and me, they're way past cool.
Hello my friends, this is Wakeangel2001. I hesitate to call this an actual custom video because all I really did was make one part, but I think it still counts given the subject matter. In my review of the Infinite figure, I pointed out that the figure cannot stand. I blame this on the curl of his tail. Obviously, the tail has a bend to it so that he can fit in the blister bubble, but I think it would have been better if they just made the tail straight and then just disconnected it and left it to the purchaser to plug it in. I mean, they do that for some toy lines. It is a thing that happens. They didn't here. They tried to make it all fit in one piece, and that came to the figure's detriment. In the comments of the video review I did, people were saying that the figure was probably having a hard time standing because I was using a chair that has a cushion, and some people made claims that there were people who got the figure to stand. But here's the thing. Before I posted that video, I of course tested to make sure I could make the Infinite figure stand, so that I wouldn't look like an idiot if someone else, if it actually was possible on a harder surface. And no, it didn't happen. The only way I was able to get Infinite to stand was if I leaned him forward as much as 45 degrees so that his head and tail could be in counterbalance to each other. He could not stand straight. Even when I tried to pose him by putting his legs out, like by bending the knees, it still wouldn't work because the way his tail curved, it curled kind of inward on itself, creating a ramp that he would roll back on instead of a point that would act as a tripod stance. So no, there's no getting this figure to stand unassisted. And I even tried to use Sonic's snowboard as an impromptu stand, and even with that thing lined up so that it goes way behind him, quite frankly, Infinite's hair makes the figure so top heavy that even if you get a stand to make it work, eventually the weight of the head overpowers the friction in his hips, and he'll just fall backwards from limboing himself to death. So yeah, there's no way to get Infinite to stand on a display. Which is why I use my 3D printer to make the tail. This is the exact same model from the game that I used to make my custom Infinites. I didn't even need to resize it. Shown side by side, you can tell by the floofy part that it is the same scale. And I think if you were to unbend the official Infinite tail, I think it would actually be the same length. It's not like Jakks made the tail too short. They just, put it in a bad pose. So I cut off the ball joints on the end of the official tail, sanded a smooth part onto the end of the printed one, glued them together, used a little bit of epoxy to cover all the scars, and once reattached, now Infinite can stand. He can stand with his tail touching, and because the ball joint is still in there, I can still pose the tail. So he can take on pose stances where you would need to move the tail a bit so that it can still touch the ground even with the legs lifted. And he can totally stand without having to lean in any direction. So I now have an Infinite figure that will permanently stand in my display without falling over. So yeah, as I said before, suck it, Jakks Pacific. So this is Wakeangel2001 very smugly signing off.